Good evening, everyone. We have a slightly different setup tonight. Matt is out for the evening, so I have decided to film upstairs in my living room because it's more comfortable here. I have decided to do this on a whim, so I am a bit of a mess. I literally just got back from walking the dog. I threw on a clean shirt. I haven't done my makeup. I haven't done my hair. It's all over the place, but that's okay. We're going with it. It's Saturday night. Let's just relax, okay? Get a drink, get a beverage or a snack or something, and just relax with me. Okay, so tonight I wanted to do a video on my favourite artisanal perfumes. I feel like I haven't really been talking about these types of perfumes much lately, and I've started to bring them back in to my repertoire, but for a while I wasn't really wearing these, and I think it was just, I don't know, my fragrance tastes were changing a little bit this year, and I was moving into a much sweeter direction. I was really exploring much bolder, much sweeter fragrances, whether that is in the form of a vanillic sweetness or whether it's more of a fruity floral bent. I think this has sort of been happening slowly over a couple of years as people around me are introducing me to things that I perhaps would have overlooked entirely a few years ago. And so consequently, I had kind of stopped wearing these perfumes, and I didn't realize how much I missed them until I sort of rediscovered them again. And I have Marie and Pep from Miskeo Perfumes to thank for bringing me back into this realm. And spoiler alert, they do get a mention in this list. But yeah, what do I mean by artisanal perfumes? For me, when I talk about artisanal perfumes, I'm talking about perfume brands where it's kind of a one-man band. Somebody's making this stuff at home, or maybe they're not making it at home now. Maybe they've got a little place where they can go to make it, but they're basically it's single person, small batch, probably a high quantity of naturals being used, if not entirely natural perfumes. And I don't know what the official delineation is between artisanal and indie and niche. And frankly, I don't really care. I figure as long as you know what I'm talking about, you could probably just think of this video as being a video where I'm showcasing the smaller guys. There are a couple of brands that I still consider to be artisanal brands that I really love and I do talk about quite a lot that aren't featured in this list tonight. And primarily that's because I do talk about them a lot anyway. I feel like they are also quite popular brands now and they're growing. So I really just sort of wanted to bring the focus back on to the little guys. Look, I think I'm going to leave it there and just get on with it. So enjoy the list and thanks in advance for watching. So the first house I want to talk about is TRNP Natural Perfumes. TRNP is a local perfumer to me. I was very excited when I found out that she was based in Brisbane, and I have spent quite a bit of time investigating and testing her fragrances, and I have to say there is just something about them that I really love, and I know quite a few other frag heads love her work as well, and there's just something very special about her perfumes, and they make me feel calm, they make me feel at home, like I've found my place in the world, So the first one I would like to talk about is called Dragon Boat. So this fragrance, I love this fragrance, and the more I wear this, the more I love it. It's just such a happy fragrance. It's based around osmanthus, I believe, and it's also got a little bit of a greenness to it. So there's a sweetness, but it's not overly sweet. It's very bright and bubbly. That osmanthus just gives it just such an uplifting feel to it. And I don't know, I just really love this one. And I blind bought this one during the pandemic. It is just such a friendly, bubbly, happy perfume. So that is Dragon Boat by TRNP. I am going to try and keep my descriptions short this evening because I know I can ramble quite a bit. So the next perfume I would like to talk about is also from TRNP. This is called Eau Naturel. So this is an ambery fragrance that has quite a lot of woodiness to it as well. There's also quite a bit of patchouli in here. And what I like about it is it has kind of this musky feel to it. It's also kind of a little bit green, so it's a little bit mossy. It's a little bit hard to describe, but basically the overall effect of mossiness, patchouli, woods, amber and earthy tones mixed in with a bunch of resins seems to be, it almost has like a warm skin feel to it. So it's interesting because at the moment there's a lot of videos being made around Your Skin But Better perfumes, clean skin perfumes. This one feels like a Your Skin But Better fragrance without being molecular and synthetic, and it also isn't necessarily what I would consider to be necessarily a clean fragrance. It doesn't smell dirty, but I think the effect of the amber and the woods and some of these mossy tones, earthy tones, is that it does have the effect of smelling a little bit like warm skin, but not super clean skin, not laundry clean like a lot of the other clean skin scents are. When you smell it out of the bottle, it definitely feels a lot stronger, but when you put it on your skin, I don't know, it just sort of blends into your skin really nicely. And I adore this. I really like wearing this with a white shirt. I just feel like it's subtle, and people, you know, it's one of those fragrances where people would be wondering whether it's your natural scent that's making you smell so good, or whether it's enhanced by the addition of something. And obviously it's a natural perfume, so it doesn't have, again, that sort of molecular feel that a lot of sort of skin scent fragrances have. Anyway, I adore this. I think it's fantastic. Chaumes Lunaires by Rogue Perfumery is a tuberose based fragrance. I think when I first bought this, I read some copy about this saying that it was a tuberose fragrance where he wanted to showcase sort of a fluffy vanilla accord. And I have to admit, as the years have gone on, I feel like I get less of the vanilla and I get more and more of the tuberose and, you know, just the general white florals. There's also a coconut note in here, which I have to say I didn't grasp when I first got it, but I think I get more of it now. And I don't know if that's just me getting better at understanding which notes are coming out at me, or whether just with age this fragrance is developing into a slightly different version of the perfume that I bought a few years ago. You can see I've worn a fair amount of it, and I do really love this fragrance. Sometimes I struggle to figure out when I want to wear it, because sometimes it's almost like I want something a bit sweeter, or sometimes I want something tuberose but more fresh. And I do have my eye on his tuberose and moss fragrance. I have been kind of desiring that fragrance for quite some time now, and I think what I like about that one is just, it is, I guess, a little bit less musky than this one, and it is more green and earthy and mossy, as the name would suggest. But this one is still absolutely stunning, and I picked this one up a couple of weeks ago out of the cabinet and started wearing it again, and I have to say I fell in love with it all over again. So I'm really, really happy to have discovered this house. Next up is Sex and Jasmine by Libertine Fragrances. This is one that I discovered back in 2020. I got a sample of it sent to me, or somebody sent me a sample of it, and I pretty much instantly fell in love with it. So this fragrance, obviously centered around jasmine, particularly jasmine sambac. And it is quite a realistic jasmine scent. If you were to buy a pure jasmine oil, you would find that this leans very similar to a pure jasmine oil. I did pick up a pure jasmine oil in Morocco a couple of years ago, and there's definitely some strong similarities, although this has obviously more going on than just a pure jasmine oil. There's a vanilla bourbon note in here. It does have an underlying sweetness to it, but I wouldn't say it's a super sweet fragrance. But there's also patchouli in here as well. So it does have a bit of a darkness to it, but I wouldn't necessarily call this a dark fragrance, but it does sort of feel like it leans nighttime-ish. I really like this. The reviews on this are highly mixed. It seems to be a very polarizing one. People either seem to love it or they hate it. I personally love it. A lot of people complain they don't get a lot of the jasmine, or they don't feel like it's a jasmine-centric perfume. I disagree. I think for me, I get lots of jasmine out of this, but I understand that a lot of people seem to get a very dry, dusty, woody bent to this. But for me, this is still very much a jasmine forward fragrance, and I really just love it. Now, this is one that I have not worn in ages. This is Origin Story by Sarah Horowitz. I love this fragrance, and I remember there was a particular time when I bought this fragrance and I was discovering her house in general. She has a lovely selection of perfumes. I also really love, I think it's called Hereafter, and then I think there's another one called The Now or something like that. And they're really, really pretty too. They're kind of musky florals, if I remember correctly. But this one is an amber fragrance. It's a very soft amber. It's quite sweet as well, but not syrupy sweet. It's sort of, it's got a very airy, diffusive quality about it. It's a little bit musky. It's a little bit powdery. There's a bit of a dryness to it as well, but there's also a sweetness in there. I think there's rose and, of course, a bunch of spices. I think she's got things like nutmeg and cinnamon and stuff in there, which are notes that I just really adore. They're not super heavy, like you can get in some amber fragrances where those dry spices just really, can choke you out almost. They're very subtle in here, and it feels very innocent, and that's what I just love about this fragrance. Even though it's an amber fragrance, and you would think that being an amber fragrance, it might be a bit heavier and a bit darker and maybe a bit more serious. I don't find that with this one at all. I just find it to be a really lovely, uplifting, and very pure and untainted by life. This is, I consider this to be a happy perfume as well, actually. So that is Origin Story by Sarah Horowitz. Next up is another one from someone local here in Australia. This is called Lost Wanderer by Peosym Parfums. This is another ambery scent. This one is a lot more spicy than Origin Story, however, and it reminds me a lot of Tobacco Vanille, but it's a lot drier. It's not as syrupy sweet, and I find this to be a lot more wearable personally. I'm not a huge fan of Tobacco Vanille. It's just too sweet and too much for me. Whereas this one, I feel like I can wear it. It's a lot more, again, it's sort of more airy, and whilst there's some heavy hitting notes in there, it doesn't feel like it's weighing me down. It's not getting too syrupy. I feel like it still has quite a prominent clove note in it, so if you don't like clove, you may not like this. And I know it's a little bit lazy to just be comparing it to something else, but there is quite a strong similarity to Tobacco Vanille to me. But I do feel like this stands alone on its own as well, in terms of being a really lovely, spicy, vanillic amber. This is definitely one you've heard me speak about before. This is Blackwater Thistle by Criminal Elements. Again, this is one that I discovered in 2020, I believe. This is an Australian perfumer. Unfortunately, this one is not available anymore. It has been discontinued, I think. I think he put his last bottles up for sale, not just recently, on Instagram. And the only reason I know that is because somebody, I think, commented on his post and tagged me saying that, you know, they were going in. He was running a competition, I think, to win the last bottle of this, and I think they entered the competition saying that they were intrigued after I'd spoken about this one. So this one to me is a really lovely, a green floral fragrance. It, in a way, is very reminiscent to me of Chanel No. 19, but this has a very interesting, prominent damp soil note. And it does actually smell like dirt, but it doesn't smell dirty, if that makes any sense. But I like the soil note, and I particularly like it because it imparts a humidity to this fragrance and a dampness to this fragrance that I don't get in other green floral fragrances. It softens the sharpness that you can get from the greenery, and it also gives it a cooling effect. So if I put this on in the warmer months, and that's when I tend to wear it, I tend to wear it in spring and a little bit of summer. And when I put it on, I feel like it makes me feel like I'm in a cooler environment than maybe I am in reality. And it also has a very grounding presence for me. So I find it to be a lovely scent to wear when I'm tending to my plants, particularly early in the morning, because it gives you a sensation of walking through a damp floral garden in the early hours of the morning, you know, just maybe even just before the sun is actually up. And it's just, I don't know why I love it so much. It is a really weird one, but I really love this fragrance. Corey is definitely still releasing more fragrances. He's definitely updated his line. It's just that this particular one is no longer available, I believe. It would be very remiss of me to not mention Miskeo Parfums. I did forget to mention them in my wish list video, which I felt really bad about, but there were many actually that I forgot to mention in my wish list video that I did a couple of weeks ago. I still only have samples because, again, I am on a no-buy year and it's not finished yet. But I do have my eye on a bottle of Pistil, which is the floral one from this brand, although there are a couple more that I particularly like Broom and Espis. Is that how you say it? Which is sort of the spicy ambery one. So this isn't focusing very well. It's just a sample, but basically this is a jasmine forward fragrance. Yeah, it's super interesting. So there's jasmine, but it also feels very green, and the jasmine actually doesn't come out straight away for me. I get kind of a greenness in the opening, or maybe that is the jasmine, maybe it's a green sort of jasmine. But it also has this aromatic tone to it, but there's also a woodiness to it and a creaminess to it, which probably comes from the florals. But there's something else, and I don't know how to describe it, but it almost feels waxy. Yeah, it's kind of like a waxiness that it has. Yeah, I can't decide if it's a waxiness or a creaminess, but it kind of tones down and mutes some of the notes. So there's nothing super sharp in here. Yeah, it's quite earthy. And it's not overly floral, but I do get the jasmine. I feel like there's quite a bit of a woodsy vibe to it. It's very interesting. It doesn't smell like anything else that I've smelled. And it also has a very, as I mentioned, a very aromatic tone. There's a sort of almost a coolness going through it, which I think is the lavender. And that's quite prominent to me. It's quite noticeable. It stays with me as well. Anyway, I find it really, really interesting. I'm still obviously getting to know it. I'm still wearing my sample, so I'll definitely make sure I wear through this sample over the next few months to just really familiarise myself with it. And then by then I will be free to purchase a bottle if I so wish. So I hope you found that interesting. In particular, I would really like to know if there are any indie perfumers that you recommend that I should look into, because I love discovering really unique fragrances like this. You know, this is definitely not stuff that you're going to smell on just anybody, and that's one of the reasons I'm drawn to them, obviously, but I'm also really drawn to them because I love the rawness of perfumes that aren't, I don't want to say mass produced, but there is a certain earthiness, a certain rawness. They're perhaps a little bit more rough around the edges than, say, you know, your more high-end perfumes, I guess. You know, there is just something special about independent perfumes that are made in small batches, and maybe also it's a bit of romanticism on my part, because I feel like you can really sense the labour of love to create these things. All right, I'm going to stop rambling, but yeah, please do leave your recommendations down below so that I can start to investigate some fun new things in the new year. And thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned, where I had sometimes played